What's going on, everybody? Propsy and today I'm going to be going over the top 5 meta decks post Supreme Darkness. I think this new set's going to shake up the format a lot more than people think, so I wanted to go over what I think the top 5 decks are going to be going into YSS Orlando. So I think the next best deck going into the new format is going to be the Mitsurugi YuGiOh deck, even better than the Fiendsmith YuGiOh deck. So especially at the beginning of the format, the reasons for this and like the main advantages of the Mitsurugi engine are that I can set up a board wipe as well as an Omni Negate in the form of a trap card with the Great Purification. The Omni Negate being in the form of a trap card, I think, is a lot better than the Desiree because it's a lot harder to counter, as well as it doesn't play into talents, and you get a board wipe on top of the negation, which I think is just better. This deck is going to have insane follow-up, even better than the Fiendsmith engine. I think the Mitsurugi gives you even better follow-up than you got with the Fiendsmith cards, as well as this deck is now getting the Twins XYZ, which is going to give even more recursion and make it so that you can't just use an imperm on your turn to stop the engine. It's also not going to be as expected or easy to counter because people aren't going to have as much testing. So I think especially at the beginning of the format, this is going to be running rampant at events like Orlando. The engine is super small, extremely strong, super recursive, value-centric, and adds an entirely new layer to this deck that I think is going to make it even better than the past versions and make this the best deck going into the next format. Alright, so the second best deck going into the next format really needs no introduction. It's going to be the Fiendsmith YuGiOh deck. This deck is the clear top dog of the current format before we get the Mitsurugi cards, and it's only going to get stronger when they get the new Twins XYZ. This deck has about 40% of all top cuts at the moment, and for good reason. Super strong, has great pushes going second, great follow-up. The main deck plays 18 hand traps. While I think like the Mitsurugi is going to edge it out by a small margin, I still think that this deck is very clearly going to be right at the top. And the top two decks, while they're going to play and be a lot different, I think that this deck is still going to be very close to the Mitsurugi deck. So I definitely think that you still need to prepare your deck to be able to beat YuGiOh, whether or not it's the Mitsurugi engine or the Fiendsmith engine. I think different cards are good against both different decks. It's going to be a good idea to find some cards that you think are lining up well into both decks. But I think that this deck is very clearly going to be the second best deck of the next format. And who knows, maybe it'll edge out the Mitsurugi deck and still just be the best deck. Alrighty, so the third best deck of the new format, in my opinion, is going to be Maliss. I think this deck is a clear second currently based on the numbers and isn't going to get any worse specifically. But nothing is going to happen that's going to give it a clear edge over YuGiOh, as it doesn't have an edge right now, in my opinion. The Maliss deck has an amazing non-targeting removal, multiple non-targeting removal effects, which is awesome. And it can play Dimension Shifter, which I actually believe is very good against both versions of YuGiOh. I think people were initially thinking it wasn't going to be that good into YuGiOh, but I think in the Fiendsmith cards and the Mitsurugi cards, it is really good. And I think that will be really good for this deck moving into the next format, and maybe it's a card that's going to be moved into more of the Maliss main decks. So this deck has become a lot stronger recently, as the main version of this deck being played is the Sky Striker version, which helps a lot into Lancia when they go first because they can put their two bodies on the field, and then especially if they have something like White Rabbit, they could set a trap and then summon Binder, and then set another trap. And I think that that's really good. The Striker engine also helps a lot because they can search Widow Anchor, so they can just start their turn, immediately engage for a Widow Anchor Detonator. However, that is going to become a lot worse moving into the next format because now Detonator can just chain pop itself, and the Twins of Eclipse is going to allow you to immediately summon another Detonator, which poses the question if the Striker engine will actually still be the best version of Maliss, as I think Dimension Shifter is going to become a lot better moving forward, and obviously the Striker cards don't work amazingly with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of innovation is done with the Maliss deck but I think regardless of what the innovation, it's definitely going to be the third most represented deck moving forward. Alrighty, so the fourth best deck of the new format, I believe, is going to come to, like, as a surprise to a lot of you guys, and it's another new deck. I believe that the fourth best deck of the next new format is going to be Crystron. They got new support cards that are all really good, and this is just including a new spell card, a new monster that's an extender and starter. They're all super recursive. I think that they line up super well into the YuGiOh and the Mitsurugi cards, as they all have like really good grave effects. And a lot of them can chain away from the detonator pop. They also got a new synchro monster that can help you recur cards, including the new trap card that helps you layer disruption. It pops cards your opponent controls and shuffles back your cards, which is amazing. This deck can synchro summon on both players' turns. It can summon Cyber Dragon Infinity. Has tons of room for non-engine. And honestly, I think this deck's just an awesome example of an older deck that, to my understanding, has never really been good, getting support that is really strong and pushes it immediately into meta contention. And I think this deck's going to catch a lot of people off guard, and I think is going to be positioned into being the fourth most represented deck of the next format. Alrighty, so the fifth and final deck on this list of the new top decks moving forward is going to be none other than Yubel. Yubel continues to stand the test of time and be a top deck when it's piloted by the better players. I also think the more players are starting to lean towards breakers, or even like half breakers, half hand traps, and I think that positions this deck really well. Even better than it's positioned now. The more that people play breakers or like full breakers, I think it's just very, very hard, if not nearly impossible, to actually beat the Yubel deck, especially because I think something like Dark Ruler No More is nearly non-existent in the format currently, and I think its boards are still just nearly unbreakable. As Pack has also shown when playing this deck for a long time that you can fit a lot of hand traps in this deck. And it's one of the best users of the Fiendsmith cards, if not the best, because it has so much natural synergy that they can summon the Area Leader and do things with that. While this deck has fallen off in representation quite a bit, I still think that it's super strong, and it's going to be the fifth most represented deck moving forward. Phantom did go to 1, but you can recycle it with the field spell and Blue Dog Link Monster effect. You can summon it back with you can recycle it via like many different ways. So getting back the 3 Spirit Gates, I feel like makes the deck feel just about as strong as it has in the past, and I think that it's really good pick moving forward. Alrighty, so for my final thoughts, and then some honorable mentions, I did want to mention that I actually did forget to mention at the beginning that one of the things that makes the Mitsurugi deck so strong is the fact that it gets to play Nadir Servant, which is a 1-card ritual because of how broken the new ritual spell is. And it's a god tier board breaker, and it just gains insane value when it goes first. I think Nadir Servant is just one of the best cards I've ever had the pleasure of playing, and I think if you can play that card in your deck, you should be playing it. And I think if people are playing the Mitsurugi cards, they're going to play that card in their deck, and that's just a massive advantage. That card is absolutely insane. I also think it's important to note that there are specifically these decks that are the top 5 meta decks, but I'm not saying that these are the strongest decks or what I suggest for you to play. These are just based on representation. So this is what I'm telling you I think you should expect at a YCS. So that being said, for the honorable mentions, I first wanted to bring up Melodious. I think this deck has an incredible YuGiOh and Maliss matchups, which is huge. I do think this deck gets a bit worse once the Mitsurugi cards come out, because I think you're inclined to play Elgi because of the non-targeting destruction. And then I think they just don't have an out, but that's just like an additional brick that you're putting into your deck that you really don't want to draw. But I do think the deck is just an excellent choice moving forward, and it's something I've been playing a ton of recently. And I think it's a great option. So, you guys all know I also have to mention the OG Voiceless Voice. Well, I haven't been playing as much Voiceless Voice over the last couple weeks because I don't prefer board breaker decks. I do think the board breaker version of this deck is the best version currently and is a strong contender in the upcoming format. I think that obviously you can play like Ultimate Slayer, all those good things. I do worry a little bit though that the Mitsurugi cards might just be stronger because they can also put up an Omni Negate and they're just so value centric. And like I said, Nadir and Prebop are both full one card combos, where obviously neither of those are one card combos and voiceless. But I do think that that deck is still not a bad option moving forward. So the last deck I wanted to mention that I think is super strong, but I think requires really good deck building and technical play is going to be Mermail. I think the Mermail deck is really good, and I think Uninterrupted, like I said about the board breakers with Yubel, I think this deck Uninterrupted is the best, and sometimes when they open just insane, like with Minstrel or anything like that, like this has the potential to be the very best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Going first, and it's not even close. It's that's like by a massive margin. I think Mermail is insane. It can play 15 hand traps, one of which being Impulse, which I think is going to be a lot better next format with the Mitsurugi cards being good. And I think Mermail is just is a good choice. Shifter worries me because I think they just don't have a true good like recourse for Shifter. But I did want to mention that while there are a ton of decks left out of this, that's because it was just a top 5 list. I wanted to give some honorable mentions, but I think that it's a really good place in the format where I think you can play almost any deck if you have good innovation and technical play, which, you know, is a good sign moving forward. I also wanted to mention, if you did like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as drop a comment, and check out my Twitch link below at prophecywiz_, where I stream every Monday through Friday. It helps the channel just a ton. Liking, subscribing, commenting, letting me know what you guys think about this tier list, letting me know what you guys want to see moving forward. I'll be posting every Tuesday and Friday moving forward this year, maybe even more. And I just wanted to thank you guys again for all the support. We got 2,000 subscribers last year. We more than 50 times the channel size, and just the support and all the community. You guys have been absolutely amazing. So thank you guys genuinely so much.